This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results.
It's no different than being a professional baseball player. You can't be a one-trick pony. You have to be a 5-tool player in order to succeed in this game.
This is the Power Producers Podcast, production redefined. Are you ready to feel the power?
Hey everybody, welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we're refining and redefining the sales game, and we are continuing on with our series of agencies who give back. And today from Everett, Washington, we have Ms. Claudia McClain from McClain Insurance Services. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
It is our pleasure. You know, we were talking about it briefly before I hit the record button. I think you were the number one name. You were in the running. It was between you and Mike Stromzo, and based on the amount that you've already been smiling since we've been talking, I don't know which one of the two of you is a happier person.
Well, Mike is definitely a great mentor and friend. So Mike definitely goes to the top of my list for sure.
There you go. That's good. So I'm sure that a lot of people who are in our audience know who you are, have heard of you, and some of the things that you've done. I mean, I literally just put together a whole chain of conversations from 2.5, almost 3 years ago at this point that helped me, know who you are. Just give everybody a little bit of background about what's going on with your agency, and then we'll dive in with questions and stuff about some of your community involvement and things after that.
Sure. Well, our agency is kind of a bit unique in that it's 43 years old. I started at scratch, one client at a time back in 1977. And we now have 9 team members and support a personalized premium of about $9.5 million. And we have about 3,800 clients. And each of them, kind of our average policy per client is about 2.45. So we're about slow and consistent growth. We're all about retention and all about what we call the 3 C's, which is really our clients, our community, and our coworkers. And everything that we do, we try to stay focused on those 3 things.
I'll tell you what, that is a lot of personal lines premium for that part of the country, right? Yeah. If you tell me that you were there in Florida, I think you might have 6 clients.
I wish I had your premiums.
Yeah, you don't want my headaches.
Under 1,000.
Yeah, you don't want my headaches, though. I can promise you that. I mean, that is impressive. That comes with a lot of responsibility too. I mean, you have to have. How have you? I don't know. I mean, there's so many ways I can go with this and so many questions I can ask. I mean, the one thing that sticks out to me more than anything else is technology and how you've been able to adapt. I mean, starting 1977, I was 4 years old, and I can remember going to the State Farm office with my dad where the receptionist was still allowed to smoke in the lobby when you walked in, and I'm interested because I'm always intrigued when people have been in the industry for a longer period of time than what I have been, just to sort of get their thoughts on the migration of technology over that time, because I've seen how much things have changed in the 17 years I've been doing this, and you've got me beat.
Well, the growth of technology has been just exponential, especially in the last 10 years, let's say. But it's always been a factor for us. And back in the day when I started the agency, while I started as a personal lines agent, independent, but with a limited number of companies that we represented, there was a lot of pressure to become, to kind of expand into other arenas, especially commercial. And we tried it for a little bit. And one of the things that we realized is that, and that's one of the things I really admire about you, David, is that you know what works for your agency, and you stay in your lane, and you expand on it, and you make it, better. For us, we learned that what we liked was working with families and individuals, and we liked the control that at that time personal lines, had much more than commercial lines. You could pull out a book, but you could deliver a rate very quickly, where with commercial lines, everything was sent off to underwriters to quote and the rest. And so for us, that was kind of the key for us, just defining ourselves as a personal lines agency that wanted to stick with the preferred business and really focus on the growth and the retention. And the technology has helped us to do that. And when we've gotten into relationships with carriers and the technology for that carrier isn't exactly as was expected or promised, oftentimes that'll make a difference in whether that carrier retains a place in our agency or not. Because if we can't be efficient and we can't deliver on the client's expectations, which are, becoming more and more demanding in terms of speed of response and the rest, we're not going to be able to compete with some of the other, options in the marketplace.
I agree. And I'm glad to hear you say that about the carriers might not have a place in your agency, because I don't think that we stick up for ourselves as much as we should. Too many agencies out there are wanting to get the next carrier contract. It's crazy. You get the shiny object syndrome with technology products and everything else, but it's no different with insurance companies, right? Somebody goes out, they lose a piece of business to one carrier who just so happened to have a great premium on that one piece of business. Next thing you know, they're going out and they're wanting to change the face of their whole agency because they have to have that carrier contract. That's what will ultimately make them, successful, when in reality, what you really need to do is make sure you understand what your carriers you already have want, what they're really good at, and then just feed them. You'll be fine.
Absolutely. And depth of relationship, not only with your clients, but also with your team and with your carriers, is huge in our industry, because it's that allows everything else to happen.
I agree. So many things that we can talk about, but I mean, one of the things that drives me nuts is when I hear other agents talking about an adversarial relationship with an underwriter. I've never had that. Like, I've got some underwriters that I don't necessarily agree with, but they're also carriers we don't place business with. At least in critical mass. You're laughing. I know exactly where you're going because of the conversation you had yesterday. I mean, Kyle,
It continued into this morning.
Oh my goodness! Well,
it was a copy and paste situation from the previous comment, and I just I had to walk away at that point.
Yeah, hide the carrier name and talk about that though, because this is the kind of crap I'm talking about. This is insane.
Yeah. So I was quoting some business for a print shop, and printers, is something that we were trying to get coverage on. And the underwriter asked a question about raffle tickets, amongst other things. And I verified with the prospect that they weren't doing those other things. She said, but we did print, some a very small amount of raffle tickets for like a party or whatever it was. Okay, so I relayed that information, and the underwriter
one time they did that.
I was like, right, and so I relayed that information, and they were like, okay, we can't do the printers, that's not acceptable under any amount or quantity or frequency for the raffle tickets. I was like, okay, and a bunch of other stuff she'd listed in there too, and I was like, okay, that's all fine. I'm having trouble understanding the raffle ticket portion of this. Can you elaborate? And the the subsequent comment was basically, it's not in the appetite. We can't write it. There's no exceptions. I was like, I'm not asking you to make an exception. I just want to understand what about the raffle ticket specifically, that exposure specifically, is unacceptable. Like, why I'm trying to understand this.
Yeah, he was wanting them to educate him on why
Right.
it's an issue. He asked me, I'm like, I honestly don't know. I've never run into this before.
Right.
I mean, maybe if they print a bunch of raffle tickets and they're all the same number or something, and it ruins a prize drawing, that could be the case. But the point of the whole thing was, it was like literally somebody was reading from a manual and then copying the answer and pasting it. They're not even giving you human interaction anymore.
It was crazy. And yeah, right. And my last response to it was just that. I was like, look, like, I understand you're not going to write it. I'm not trying to get you to write it. I simply just want to know why the raffle tickets are unacceptable. Like, I find it amusing that you won't tell me. It's crazy. And then it was a copy and paste of the last comment.
Is, at this point, the fact is they don't know. Like, this person has no clue why they won't do it. They just know that this. It's like the people that monitor
they should be able to ask somebody, and that person should know. Like,
it's
they
like
should
the
have
people who do certificate compliance. Either it fits in the box or it doesn't. And if there's one little thing off, you can't ask them. Well, perfect example. They want $1 million combined single limit on auto. We write 500,000 with $1 million umbrella because the client actually gets more coverage for less money due to how a certain carrier's ratings platform works. Okay. Right. So they have more insurance than what they're required to have. Right. But the people at the certificate compliance place short circuit. They don't see the million.
Right. Yeah.
So whatever.
Anyhow, that's
but to your point, this carrier really doesn't have a place in our agency after that.
Right. Yeah. Anyhow. So that's my soapbox about.
There you go.
Sorry you went through that.
No.
Well, it's interesting too, though. I mean, when obviously you didn't start with 9.5 million in premium of clients in 1977, but how did you, I mean, was that all filing cabinets? I mean, I can remember actually seeing insurance policies being typed in a typewriter, like to put the right information on the deck page in person.
We weren't quite in that situation, but we did have file cabinets. We're one of the first agencies that I know of that went paperless, and it was 1990 something. It was very early on. It had a system called DocuStar that was a document imaging system back then because we wanted to eliminate the filing cabinets. But no, things were manually rated. I mean, my first carrier that I had, everything was in a small book about this size. And you went through and you did factors. So if it was a commute to work, it was 1.1 times every one of the rates for the various coverages and the rest. So it was very manual. My math mind was a lot more efficient than it is now with calculators. Sure. But yeah, over time, I mean, we kind of pushed our carriers to start providing us with comparative, or not even comparative rating, just rating on the computer versus manual. When I first started, we didn't have computers. I used a memory typewriter. That was how I communicated with clients. There was I'm going to really show my age, but you would have a little cassette tape recorder that you'd plug into the memory typewriter, and you would record a letter that you were typing and onto the cassette recorder, and then you could create another letter using that, and then edit it as you went along. It was that, and that was an Olympia typewriter. It cost $2,100 back in the day.
And then have it delivered on horseback.
So. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, thanks. I'm not quite that, but yeah. And and so to see the evolution and to see how much we're able to do on mobile devices now, and how much we're able to deploy from our websites and the rest, it's just awesome. It's very, very exciting, and I think it tells you, for us at least, the message has been embrace the technology early. And deploy it to the degree that your customers accept it. If there's something, there are some hits and misses. Sometimes the clients don't want to necessarily adapt to certain technology, and they're usually, at the end of the day, the final say on it. But for the most part, if we keep on moving and keep our minds open to whatever the next need of the client is, then we can stay relevant in their minds and continue to compete with the bigger guys.
So what kind of tech are you guys using now inside the agency?
I was going to say, let me ask that. I want to even make that more hyper-focused.
Yeah.
Because I think that, I always go back to when I went to college, the internet really didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just starting, but email wasn't mainstream. We certainly couldn't go log on to a web browser and go to any website. A lot of companies didn't even have websites yet. So when my kids are hammering me about being an old man and not knowing technology and Snapchat and all this other garbage that they play with, I tell them all the time, I'm more dangerous than they are because I've actually watched how technology gets developed. And so I can see trends. As I see a need, I can start identifying ways that this potentially could be met. I'm interested in, what the coolest piece of technology is that you have now that would have just been an absolute nightmare manual task for you to have to do when you started.
Oh my goodness. There's just so many variables to that. I mean, at a very basic level that everybody should have by now, but there's still agencies that don't, kind of the integration of your agency management system and your comparative rater. The time savings there alone are massive and huge. Then the integration of your agency management system with your various CRM systems so that you can drip on clients and send appropriate messaging at the appropriate time. That's been important. I was the first beta test for Agency Revolution, for example, back more than a decade ago. So there are things like that. And then, as we've evolved, certainly integrating a mobile app, integrating texting as a regular communication style with our clients and using it very effectively. I mean, we're finding more and more that emails are ending up in people's spam folders. And so you can spend an hour putting together this beautiful, multi-line proposal to a client, send it off. And if you don't follow up immediately and let them know that you've just sent it and to check your spam folder in case it's there, you could have somebody who's thinking that you're totally inattentive to what their request was. So we've been building out sequence steps of how we're going to touch the clients and when it's critical to be using text as another communication. And of course, I mean, then you can get into some of the issues, like how you communicate with clients on social media, how you bring those communications into your website. We have chatting available on our website. There's just a lot out there, and there's more that I'd like to move forward and do. I just, there's the bandwidth, and there's also that shiny object syndrome that you mentioned, David, that I need to pare a couple of items off of the Christmas tree of ornaments of technology before I add the next one.
So when you're looking at technology to bring into the agency, I think this would be great advice for anybody who's younger, as an agency owner, and younger, not necessarily by age, younger in tenure is what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. As you're going through and looking at a piece of technology to put in your agency, what are you doing to evaluate that?
Well, always trying to obviously get the demo version of it. I try to involve the critical people in the agency that would be the potential users, because I've stepped away from being as customer facing. I'm not doing the auto changes and all of the rest anymore. And so, I need the people that are on the ground to look at it and say, yes, this improves my life. Because again, if our team members are not seeing improvement in their life as a result of technology, then it's just going to sit and be used. And then I think, something that takes a lot of time, and sometimes you can really go down some rabbit holes, but being willing to spend a little time on the various, whether it's a Facebook group or the various platforms where you can find other users of that specific vendor and ask questions and say, how are you guys doing? A lot of the things that we do today have been vetted by, seeing what others' experiences have been. And the times that I've made the mistakes on the technology have been the times that I've done the demo and it's like, oh my gosh, this is wonderful. Sign me up because there's a one day only special on it. And come to find that a lot of the promises are aspirational and not necessarily practical right now today.
I agree. I mean, getting opinions from other agents that have used the project products is huge, because the technology companies are typically not going to be standing there saying, "Oh, by the way, there's this one glitch that if you have
Mm-hmm.
this, well, guess what? I'll always have that glitch," right? I mean, there's a
Yeah.
100% chance that if I make that purchase, it's going to be a problem. And I think, again, social media has definitely helped that. We all have forums that we can talk in and go back and forth with each other and get relatively good information. You know, not everything that comes out is valuable or is going to be applicable to my agency. My agency is a completely different shape, size, you know, than what
Absolutely.
yours is. But if you have a VoIP system that doesn't communicate with your CRM or your agency management system like it should, and I'm looking at going out and getting a new VoIP system, I'd like to know what your problems have been
Exactly.
before I do that, because it's, you know, the pain of changing is significant in many cases, and especially the longer that you've been where you're at, right? So
That's right.
we started with Hawksoft as our
Mm-hmm.
agency management system. I doubt I ever leave,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not going to be one of these people who has to deal with a huge data migration. I just don't have the patience and tolerance for it. So we use our agency management system very sparingly. That is not a knock on Hawksoft at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's just my philosophy is that I'm going to run my company like it's a sales organization. We'll
Mm-hmm.
do all of the things we need to do to have the housekeeping correct on the insurance transactions by having the AMS. But up until we sell an insurance product, I'm going to run everything out of HubSpot, which is my CRM, because that's what you do as a sales organization. You have the ability to organize, you know, information, do drip campaigns, do some smart response stuff and things like that. That's one reason we've been able to scale. But I can't imagine having to go through the headache of leaving. You know,
Yeah.
I've got good friends that are involved in Neon. You know, they want me to look at doing Neon, and I look at it and it's an awesome tool. But I go back and I say, our retention's like 99%. What am I going to, you know, what am I going to get from going to that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
and I'll be a great champion for your product. I'll be a mouthpiece for it. And if you were 2 years earlier, I'd probably have it. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just one of those things where I can't, the pain to change is greater than the pain to remain the same. I think that's the way it is with a lot of technology products. And until we figure out a way to make that part of it easier, it's going to continue to be a struggle for these vendors. Enough technology. You have had an agency in Everett, Washington since 1977. You can't do that without taking care of the 3 C's that you just mentioned. So I'm very interested in your culture, in your team members. I want you to talk a little bit about that first, and then we'll go into some of the stuff that you guys are doing in the community.
So help me out. What would you like to know about the team members?
Talk about your culture. I mean,
Culture.
you don't go to work. I mean, you have not stopped smiling the entire time we've been talking. So I have to believe that if I were to take that camera that I'm looking at and pan down the hallway, I'm going to see other smiles in there because it's a reflection of your leadership. What do you do for the culture of your agency? How has that been a conscious focus of yours as the leader of the organization? And how do you, what proactive measures do you as the leader take to make sure that that culture is where it needs to be?
Well, you know, COVID has actually introduced some interesting challenges to that whole culture issue. And so I feel blessed that we've had a team that had been built up and that has been retained to a point where when COVID hit, it was just a matter of moving everybody home. One of the things that we didn't talk about yet, but, you know, basically on the first week of March, the first COVID case that hit the U.S. was about 5 miles from my office. And so first week in March, we moved everybody home in a day, and they've been there since. I'm at the office every day just to kind of pull down the fort and, you know, to send the random fax that some crazy lender wants instead of an email or whatever. But beyond that, you know, things are, everybody is working from home. And one of the ways that we've been able to keep the culture alive in that very difficult separated set of circumstances is staying connected. We'd always had team meetings, for example, but they were always once a week and pretty much scheduled so that everybody could participate. We now do 2 Zoom calls. One is more agency and learning focused, with sharing from a number of the members of the team, not just from me. And the second is much more fun, and that's delegated to somebody who, comes up with interesting things to kind of keep people going. We've just always valued the team, and my goal is to make sure that every person that joins the team has the opportunity to grow to whatever level professionally they want. So we'll support them, obviously, with all of the continuing education, but more importantly, try to encourage them, see their strengths, and try to encourage them to stretch a bit more and move into a position that will result in more of a long tenured career and certainly a more profitable career to them. With 9 people, actually it's 8.5 because our marketing communications director is half time. So with 8.5 people, and that includes me, and I'm just kind of pulling the levers at times. I'm not actually client facing. They're working really hard all the time and handling a great amount of volume, but we have a reward system from a compensation standpoint that tries to reward them for the behaviors that we hope to do, for the goals that as a team we set, whether that's increasing the amount of cross sells, the upgrades, the Google reviews, whatever. And then we celebrate those. And we also look for people with good hearts, people that do embrace the community activities. And want to be a part of the things that we do as a team to give back to the community. And so we've been really blessed. I mean, most of our team has been with us over 5 years. I mentioned that we were earlier before we got on the call that we're celebrating Nick Pembroke's, our VP, his 20th anniversary with the agency this year. But I've got several team members that are over 10 and 15, and then we've got some younger team members that have joined us, but we've had success with them staying as well and embracing and growing in their roles.
So leading directly from culture into community, because that actually is part of your culture. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about that and why that's so important to you and some of the things that you guys are doing. And listen, I want to make sure you understand, I'm not asking you to brag, because people that by and large that are very, very community involved and they're doing the right things, they get a little weird when you ask them to talk about it. Okay. And so I don't want you to get weird, because this isn't you bragging. This is really more of you educating our peer group and our colleagues on some things that you're doing in the hopes that maybe they hear this and say, you know what, that would be something easy for us to implement in our agency. I mean, we're going to be talking to Chris Paradiso this afternoon. I can name at least a half a dozen agencies that are doing a bike program that Chris started years ago. We talk actually, and Kyle doesn't even know this, but that's the bike program Bob Klinger's doing. Yeah. When we had Klinger on months ago and he was talking about how they do that, Chris is actually the one who started that. So nice. I'm interested in hearing some of that stuff, and I want you to camp out here for a little bit, but don't make it weird. You're not bragging. You're simply educating.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, because I think what we do, we just do because we enjoy it and it's right for our community. Just kind of one of the aha moments that I had back, and this wasn't at the very beginning of the agency, I wish it had been, it was more, a couple decades in, where I realized that if we could find a way to spend our marketing dollars on 2 things, basically educating and supporting our clients, and then supporting our community and doing the things that improve life in the community, that's really all that we needed to do to continue to grow organically. And it kind of stems from the thought that as an agency, we're in a middle-class town. We're not in a high net worth area, but we have the combination of Boeing engineers, but also line workers, and just a combination of economic strata in our agency or in our community. Our agency can only be as strong as the people in our community are strong. And so we can't grow if we're not providing job opportunities within the community, if we're not helping to uplift the schools, if we're not helping to do the things for those the shelters and some of the areas, just the things that provide a quality of life that attract people and keep people and help them to move forward in their own lives. So to that end, we just started doing some things, and some of them were just. One of the things I would say with what we do now is that it didn't all start out like, oh, we're going to do 12 events a year or 15 events a year. It started with one idea, and we implemented that, and then the next year, oh, that first one was easy enough to accomplish. We know we're going to do it again, but we know how to do that. That's going to take, a small fraction of the time that it took last year. Now let's add another idea and another idea. So before COVID hit, we had events going pretty much every other week at least during the summertime, some in partnership with different organizations within the community. Our Parks and Rec department, for example, we became a lead sponsor for Cinema Under the Stars, which was a outdoor family movie series that's held every Friday night throughout the summer for families. It's free. And we as a team would go and kind of choose gifts that were for the kids that were kind of followed the theme of whatever the movie was. And for example, when the movie Frozen hit town and we had over 1,500 people. Wow. In a park watching that not silly movie, but that movie. And it wasn't that we were necessarily bringing clients into the agency that night from that interaction, but it was something that people heard that we were doing, and it helped inform their opinion of our agency. And so, we have found that partnerships with different organizations with the community events helps a lot, because you don't have to be the 100% organizer. I don't have to set up the movie screen. The Parks Department does that, but this event wouldn't happen unless they had our support and sponsorship and our publicity. A lot of the things that we do too, it helps the organization because we can publicize it. So we've done things. I don't know how much you want me to ramble on, but we've done Mud Strut, which is our community's day-long event celebrating all things canine, and it's at a local park, and it benefits the animal shelter. And we kind of pivoted during COVID from that to doing a virtual puppy toy drive on camera and a Facebook Live event. We've done a number of fun runs. Nick Pembroke in our office is a huge runner, and so anything that we can find that is a community fun run or that is a fundraiser for an organization, we've put together dodgeball teams and invited our clients and our vendors to join our teams to benefit the YMCA. We were as far as I know, and this is what is so wonderful about this organization, this family of agents that we all know and love. So everybody knows about Chris Paradiso and his flag exchange, right? Well, that flag exchange started in our agency back a few years before Chris heard about it. And ours was very simple. Chris has taken it to just amazing levels, but ours was fairly simple. We just told people that around Flag Day, please bring in your worn and tattered flag, and we will exchange for a new one. And we will work with the Boy Scouts to respectfully dispose of the old flags. And that's pretty much what we did. We publicized it on our video sign out front and in our newsletter and all of the rest, but that's pretty much what we did. Chris heard about it at one of these agency events. And, Chris, being the amazing patriot that he is, he took it to a completely different level. And he has spread the news of how to do a flag exchange to such a much, amazing level than I never could have. So those are the kinds of things that, just one little idea can spark somebody else to take it and do much, much more. One thing I'd like to share with you, if you don't mind, and you can decide whether it's worthy to share or not, is Food for Our Future. And this has been our COVID initiative. One of our referral, we have a referral rewards program where every referral that we receive from a client or a VIP in the agency, we donate $25 to a nonprofit of the quarter, and we choose 4 nonprofits in our community to work with each year. One of our nonprofit partners is Cocoon House, which is a shelter for homeless teens. And we heard that they were having some challenges with COVID in that their teens were normally fed breakfast and lunch, at least at school, at high school. They were keeping them in high school. So when COVID hit, their food budget was decimated. Their staffing was challenged because now all of a sudden the counselors who were so needed just to be working with these kids, keeping them in school, needed to plan more meals, and they needed to, be cooks and all of the rest. And the nonprofit and church organizations that had been bringing home cooked meals to them as just part of their outreach couldn't do that anymore because of the health regulations. So they were in a world of hurt. And then our local family-owned restaurants in town were also just really struggling. When March and April and May were hitting and they were closed down, they were trying to figure out how to do takeout. So we were lucky enough to just think about these 2 constituencies and put together Food for Our Future, which was our commitment as an agency to deliver Wednesday night dinners to the Cocoon House residents and staff every Wednesday, and all purchased from our local family restaurants. And so we mixed it up. We chose a lot of the smaller restaurants where, it really would make a difference. And the kids would give their feedback of what food they wanted to see the next week and the rest. And the cool thing that happens, and I think that that's really what community is all about. It's not about what Claudia or McClain Insurance decides to do. It's really what that starts in the community. So what happened was one of our water restoration vendors heard about it, and he said, we want to be a part of it too. Can we take some of those Wednesdays? And then our telecom IT guy heard about it, and he asked to take on some Wednesdays. And one of our carriers picked up the bill for a couple of Wednesday dinners. And then our clients started stepping in, and one said, I want to bring dessert one of these days. And another said, I want to bring a whole meal. I want to purchase the whole meal. You can deliver it, but I'll purchase it. And it's just been so heartwarming to see how the community heard about something and said, I can do that too. It's a small thing. It's a really small thing in the whole spectrum of what is needed right now. But just doing one thing leads to somebody else doing more. And I think we'll be on our 30th week coming up here of just bringing Wednesday dinners. And how this will morph as COVID, kind of hopefully leaves us. I'm not sure, but I know that food for our future will always be in our future, maybe just in some other way.
You don't even think about some of this stuff, do you? Like, I never would have thought of that. And it's great that you're able to meet that need. There's so many places out there that are not for profits that do so much good that have been affected by this just because of the way that they can receive their, contributions, whether that be monetary or otherwise. But also the needs have been magnified. I mean, if you're used to working with, youths that are getting 2 of their 3 meals provided for them at school every day, and all of a sudden you're on the hook for 3 out of 3, that will deplete, especially if it's teenagers, that'll deplete your resources extremely quickly.
That's right. So
that's awesome that you've been able to step in and do that. We talked a little bit about perpetuation.
Yeah.
Talk about that. I'm interested in getting in your head just a little bit, because having an agency that you've owned from the beginning, from scratch, is very, very personal. Obviously, you started it, and you have to figure out at some point that I'm not going to be here forever. I mean, at least that's how I think, right? And,
absolutely.
I'm interested in how all of that's broken down, how you identified how you're going to handle that, what that looks like, if you have formalized stuff in place. Because I think that's one of the issues. And let me give you some framework for why I'm asking the question. I don't want you to think, hey, by the way, Nick slid me a 20 on the side and said, make sure you ask for this here. No, that's not it at all. I think it's a place that agency principals don't spend enough time focusing on, right? Mm-hmm. They don't. And what I mean by that is I'm one of these people that I look at the end and work my way back. So I've already thought about all of this. I already have all of my plans in place for this. And so I'm making sure that my daily activities match what need to happen in order for me to achieve the final objective that's already been identified. You didn't go in 1977 thinking that way. I've learned from a lot of people who have made a lot of mistakes or didn't think about stuff. And that's one of the reasons why I've approached it the way that I have. I'm just interested in your thoughts, because at some point you're going to not want to have to even come in and do what you're doing right now. How do you tackle that?
Yeah. Well, I admire your perspective, and you're right. I think there's a lot of us that just didn't really think about. I mean, we looked at what we were doing as a way to help our clients and to put food on the table for our families, right? And as long as that was happening, and then for me, as we added team members, my obligation expanded beyond just taking care of my family to taking care of their families, mm-hmm. and giving them opportunities, right? So for a long time, that's been the focus. Now, I've been really, truly blessed to have Nick be a part of the team and want to remain a part of the team. And so back, maybe I want to say 5 years ago, we started having some conversations. I'm not going to live forever. Is this something that you would have an interest in perpetuating? Because if so, let's start figuring out how to do that. I don't know how to do that, but let's start talking about it. And if it's not, then I need to think about what the other options are, if you will. And Nick expressed an interest. And so we've gone through a number of different steps. He's now vice president and has a small percentage of interest in the agency. And going forward, probably within the next 3 years, we will transition to his ownership of the agency. But for agents that don't have a Nick, and the blessing for me of it being somebody internally is that I feel that Nick, embraces and understands the culture and what's important in terms of taking care of the team that has brought us to this successful, place, and the community and the customers too. I worry about, if I had to sell to an outside conglomerating type agency, what would happen to those team members? What would happen to the clients? And so, my blessing is that Nick is in a position where he wants to do this. His wife has actually joined the team as our communications director now, so she's getting a greater sense of what our industry is all about. Hopefully, she'll continue to like the industry. And then we can plan the transition. COVID, this was supposed to be the year of the first major, kind of handoff of some of the responsibilities, and COVID just kind of changed things. But 2021 and beyond will be the point where, I still love this industry as much as the day that I got into it. And so selfishly, I'd love to be continuing to do what I do for a long, long time. But realistically, I mentioned how important I thought it was that I need to protect the team. And if it's selfish of me, if I don't think about what will happen when I can't be here every day, because that leaves the team vulnerable. And so that's why we have to move forward with a plan that will, my goal would be that at some point, clients won't even notice that I'm not here. My goal is that just everything continues in a way, obviously with Nick's additional, input and slant on things, which I really value. And I really rely on him and on Megan to say, okay, hey, here's a thing we're thinking about. Would this resonate with your circle of friends? Because they're our future clients, right? Or they are our clients. So we need to be looking forward and doing things the way Nick and Megan, it would resonate with them and their friends. But I also, I just want, I want it to be so smooth that nobody knows that I've gone, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's probably one of the most selfless comments that I've heard. The fact that you're so worried about making sure the team itself is taken care of and not disrupted, that you're looking at this stuff proactively to avoid that happening. I mean, I think I can probably count on one hand and not even need all my fingers the number of people I know that would be able to. Truthfully, I probably know more than that because I try and surround myself with the right people. But, work with me here. There's not a lot of people out there that think that way. And I think, there are very few things that I feel like are problems in our industry. That's one of them. I think that one of the problems is that people that are in your shoes or my shoes that have gone out, they've started an agency from scratch. Yes, there are some headaches and some heartaches that come with that. It's not all rainbows and unicorns, from the second you start your agency. And because of that, anybody who comes in, and I'm not saying this is how I think, and I certainly know it's not the way that you think. This is just perception after hundreds of conversations with people. They view it as if they are solely responsible for the success of the company.
Yeah.
And you cannot think that way. You cannot think that way. And if you look at any of the major, what I would say are hot buttons or issues in an agency, that's one of them. Another one of them is producers who think that they're solely responsible for the success of an agency because they're out quoting and binding business, or service people who think they're responsible for the success of the agency because they're the ones that keep the business once the producers quit screwing around and bring it in. And I mean, when it comes back to it, if everybody, just gave, selflessly and didn't have their own agenda in mind, it would be so much smoother. You wouldn't have to deal with any of that stuff. But one of my fears for the generation that's getting ready to have to hit perpetuation plans is they don't have one. I think there's a lot of businesses that are just they're going to go away, and they're going to go away because they end up having to sell because that's the only option they have. And they're going to die on the vine for the very reason that you just said. These conglomerates that are coming in and offering all this money for books of businesses and agencies, they're never going to care for your clients the way that you care for your clients. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how flowery of a picture they paint. That's not why they're buying your agency. And I think that's a huge disconnect.
And it's not good for the community either. I mean, when you think about it, when things like that happen, and I think these higher valuations that have been rampant for the last number of years really have hurt, because on the one hand, somebody is looking at it and saying, oh my gosh, I could get X times. And, this is the huge payday that, all of these years I've put into. But those years have been collaborations with all of those people you mentioned, David. It's been the people that produce and serve and who have made the agency what it is. And if agencies sell for just the highest dollar without a consideration for the employees or for the community, what will happen is that community all of a sudden doesn't have an independent agency option there, or it's one that is much more focused externally rather than, on the community. And we've seen that happen. I mean, when I first, came to town, There weren't many female agency owners. In fact, I think I was the first of the femle independent agency owners.
I wasn't even gonna go there. I took that as a given. I mean, we have enough of a problem right now,
Yeah.
in 2020 with not having enough. It's getting better, but that's a whole podcast episode on its own of what's it like starting a business as a female in 1977. I mean, we could go for days on that. But the thing that I think about is what kind of a hole is created when private equity comes in and there isn't a place for 1,500 people to go watch Frozen in the Park anymore, because that's an expense that's not.
You can't get an ROI on it directly, and some of these community events, that's the issue, and yet it makes the community stronger in the process, right? And so, I totally agree with you, and I would, if I had all the time in the world, what I would be doing is journaling what we're trying to accomplish, because I think you're right. There are a number of agencies that if they could perpetuate internally, if that younger person in the office could actually see the roadmap that could be followed to take over the agency, and if the agency principal could realize that you are able to get a very fair settlement on your agency, you may do some self-financing, you may have to, do some special, tricks to accomplish it. But at the end of the day, there are ways that this can be done. As the values get higher, it's been much more problematic. And I know of an agency, in fact, one of our best team members joined our agency a while back because the agency that she thought, it was a family agency that she thought would ultimately be something that she would perpetuate, ended up selling to a bank. And all of a sudden now, well, where do I fit in that equation, right? Yeah. So and we run the risk as agency, like even if somebody is 20 years or 15 years younger than I am, and they're running an agency with some talent that is younger than they are, you run the risk, and we've seen that, of that talent saying, well, I better just go form my own agency, right? Because I don't know when or if there'll be an opportunity for me here. And I think, so I would love to find that coach out there that actually can walk some of us through it. I mean, the aging of the ownership of independent agencies has never been higher. I mean, it's just, the number is scary, and we've got to do something before people just start dying off.
Well, and I think the other part of the problem that's going to be compounded is the fact that those ridiculous valuations are not going to continue. So as the agency principal population continues to get older and older, they're running the risk of not being able to get nearly the money that they may think they have the ability to get based on what's going on right now. I mean, I would urge anybody and everybody, if you've not thought about this or not at least sat down with your team to discuss it, you probably need to sooner than later. Yeah. I'm on a kick right now where I say one of the biggest issues that agency principals have is we're more worried about controlling than we are collaborating. Bingo. And that's a big problem. I don't have that issue. I mean, there's certain things in the agency I have to control. I mean, it has to be done. I have to control the bank account. I'm the only one who signs on it, right? So that falls on my lap. But anything else like technology or doing demos or things like that, I want to try and have as many people included in those decisions as I can. And you actually validated that thought process earlier when you were talking about including people that are going to be the end users in it as well. I just don't understand why we can't be more open-minded to other people's points of view. It's a really, really weird dynamic. And I don't know that I see it in a lot of other industries as evident as what I see it in ours right now. And that is, figurehead has to be in control. It's going to be their way or the highway. They're not going to open the floor in sales meeting and actively listen to what people have to say as far as feedback or recommendations or whatever else. And the chance of implementation, slim and none. I mean, it's just, you're not going to see that. And so I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. I mean, to me, if I had to look at it, I honestly think that's probably, and I might get railroaded for this. I don't think that I will, though, because my heart's in the right place. I think that the aging population is probably a bigger issue. It's probably past the females in leadership position, because I think that we're starting to stabilize that a little bit. I'm not saying that there's equality, because I don't think that that's there, but I do think that enough people are making some noise, that people are paying attention, and a lot of things are going in the right direction. So I'm not saying put that on autopilot. I'm just saying that, you need to keep that one on the back burner, on the warmer, and make sure you're keeping an eye on it. But this issue of the aging agency principle, I think, is one that's gonna come back to bite a lot of people. And listen, if I wanted to be cold-hearted and opportunist, I would tell you I'm not gonna be the one, leading that parade. I'll be sitting back waiting to make some acquisitions if it makes sense.
Absolutely.
Because I will, and I do think it's important that if it's perpetuated correctly. I don't know how you could I could not come into your agency. I could if I worked really, really hard at it. Okay. But I couldn't come in there and replicate what you've done. I would be able to continue some of the same things that you're doing, but my mind won't let me operate that way. I'm always going to have my own spin that I want to put on it. And, that's what makes all of us unique.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't know how you could ever get your agency to perpetuate the way you wanted to, unless you do your best to keep it in the family.
Yeah. Well,
and by family, I mean your team.
Yeah, with the team. Yeah. One of the other things to consider when you're talking about perpetuation is that and we have spent money on perpetuation specialists and valuation specialists to try to just wrap our head around what all this involves. And we're a pretty simple agency in that we're personal lines. It shouldn't be that difficult, but it's still, it still makes sense to get the experts in. One of the things that the experts will tell you is that you have to dress your agency up for perpetuation, right? You have to get your numbers in place. You've got to cut back on all of those extraneous expenses so that you look super, super profitable to the investors that are going to be buying the agency. I get that. But when agency principals have that as their goal, then what happens? Staff is not compensated as generously as maybe you could afford to do that. Certainly the community support and philanthropy that an agency has the capability to do, and I think historically our industry has done, gets cut. I mean, I remember sitting down with the valuation specialist, and he was looking at the bottom line numbers, and I'm feeling very comfortable. I mean, I have, whatever I need, I can buy, but I don't have huge needs in terms of expensive things. And he was looking at that, and I'm going, well, yeah, I mean, I don't have to have this line item or this item or this item or this item. It would change who the agency is, but I don't need to have it if what you want me to do is just get to a bottom line that looks super profitable. And so what I worry about, is that some of these agencies that only see the path as being one of selling to the larger interests, they're doing that already even. And again, that's compromising agencies have tremendous power to do good. We because we don't have a high, when I go to a company, I ask for money, the bureaucracy that you have to go through to get a $500 donation is like ridiculous, right? If somebody comes to me and they need $500 or something, I can make that decision right on the spot.
Yeah, do you want cash, check, or charge? I mean, do you have Venmo? I mean, how can I get to your $500?
Right?
Are you still here? What are you waiting for? I sent it 10 seconds ago.
Exactly, precisely. And so we, as agency owners in our communities, have this tremendous gift and blessing of being able to do good wherever it's needed, wherever we perceive the need should be. And I would really be sad if that was lost, in future generations, simply because either the carriers decide that they need much higher volume from everybody, and you're cut out because of that, or because agency owners just can't find the people to perpetuate their agencies.
I'll tell you this: I came from running grocery stores, which is high volume, low margin. Yeah. We are in a much different environment, and I'm going to make a comment. I'll probably get kicked for this one too, but it is what it is.
You're on a roll, dude. Why stop?
I know
now?
I am. I'm really stepping out of my comfort zone. But I think that there's enough gross margin in our business that we can be sloppy operators. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is, I shouldn't say sloppy. We have the ability to lead more with our heart than a lot of other industries do.
Bingo.
Because
right.
we do have the ability to earn a really good living, and we don't have to, like, could money be missing from my organization and I don't know about it right now? It absolutely could. There's 100% chance that I could have missed something in a reconciliation, or, I didn't get a report that I needed to be able to get it over to my CFO to match everything up. But what I mean by that is, if I could be missing like $1,500 just because we missed something like that, I could be missing $1,500 that I intentionally gave to something in the community. Mm-hmm. And we have that flexibility. There's not a lot of other people who have that flexibility, whether they work for, a publicly traded company or even a private business. It's just not there. There's too much pressure. So, I think that I'm a firm believer in having an abundance mindset. I think that the more you give, the more you want to give, and the more you end up producing, not just in yourself, but in other people. And we were talking about it on the last podcast we did with Daniel Song. And I told him, I said, I said, I liken it to playing baseball. I hit a home run. I feel great about it, but I never will feel as good as what I felt like the first time my son hit a home run. And I get as much or more like Kyle. If Kyle went out and closed an account today, I'd be happier for him than I would be for myself if I went out and closed the same account, because I want to see these guys succeed. I truly want to see them succeed. I need them to succeed because I do have a perpetuation. So maybe I'm not as selfless as I think I am, but I just think that people get put into positions in leadership because they end up where they need to be because of the gifts that they've been given to give to other people and to give to the industry. And, we've spent an hour with you. It was extremely obvious to me from the very second we started talking why you've had an agency since 1977, why you have a team of people that want to be on that team and will produce with you and for you, why your community values and respects you so much. And I'm going to close this out by giving you the floor to let people know how to get in touch with you. But before I do that, I just want to tell you very, very sincerely, thank you for being such a great example of what an agency principal should be and what an agency should be in the communities that they serve. Serve being the key word, people. We're not here to sell. We're here to serve. And if you can get that mindset right, you'll never have to worry about the third S. You have your 3 C's. I'm going to give you a 3 S's, which is success.
I love it.
The floor is yours. How do they find you?
Oh, thank you. Thank you, David and Kyle, for having me today. I really appreciate it. I can be reached any number of ways. I'm on, obviously, LinkedIn, Facebook, Claudia McClain, and certainly they can email me at claudia@autohomeboat.com, our website, or text me through our website.
By the way, how much is that domain worth? Good grief. You don't need a perpetuation plan. Just sell that thing to Progressive or somebody else. I saw that domain and I'm thinking to myself, I should have brought that up when we were talking about adopting technology, because you didn't buy that last year, I can promise you.
No. And it was just out of practicality that McClain as a last name can be spelled so many different ways. And I just started searching for a name. And it was, one of the benefits of the gray hair is that I've been doing it long enough. That was early on. And I just was able to get autohomeboat.com. And that's the way it's been since. Awesome. There is McClain Insurance also, but people will misspell it. So the website and everything is autohomeboat.com. So Claudia@autohomeboat.com. Feel free to email, text, anything. I love, I'm at that stage in my career now where I absolutely love doing anything I can to uplift our distribution channel and to help other agents succeed. And so happy to help in any way I can.
People, you better reach out to her. If you don't, I will backhand you so fast you won't know what hit you. Claudia, thank you for being generous with your time with us today. Thank you for giving to the community. Truly a pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and step out on a limb and speak for Kyle and just say both of us are better people for having spent this last hour with you. We sincerely appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you. You guys are so kind. Love you. Bye-bye now.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.